Brilliant. So I'm Danny Flexen.
This is Jolie.
We're here for the latest edition of Who You Backing, which is normally a draft style battle between myself and Joe, although this week it's going to be a bit more straightforward in that we're going to take opposing fighters for the coveted pound for pound best fighter in the world category. And Joe, who are you selecting to go into this do or die dispute?
I'll give you the honours of starting your argument first, but in order to do that, you're going to have to know who I'm picking, and it's going to be, for me, the pound for pound number one. Of course, I'm going to say that, Lomachenko.
So, yeah, Joe's going to go for Vasyl Lomachenko. I'm going to go for Canelo Alvarez. And let me just start by saying I think there's a lot of disagreement among boxing fans, pundits, and boxers themselves about how the pound for pound criteria should come together. Now, there's a lot of people out there who say it's based on skills and ability, and boxers that can do things that others can't, that kind of thing. And for that reason, I understand why a lot of people have Lomachenko and Terence Crawford as well quite high up. But for me, it's similar to normal rankings, that they should be based on achievement. So results and performance. And not what you think would happen if two guys got in a ring, or potential or capabilities, but what's actually happened. Facts. I like to deal in facts, the sort of person I am. I'm a numbers guy. What can I say? And for that, Canelo Alvarez's achievements outstrip those of anyone else in the sport today. For me, he's turned pro really young. He's only ever lost to Floyd Mayweather, who was the best fighter of his generation.
But has he only just lost to Floyd Mayweather? Is that only what the scorecards have said?
Well, as I said, I deal in facts, not supposition. And
yeah.
I'm trying to think of the fights he's been in and if I've had him losing any. I think I might have had him losing to Austin Trout early in his career, but a lot of people thought that he'd done enough to win that anyway. But of the other kind of contentious ones, I had him beating Erislandy Lara. I thought Lara didn't do anywhere near enough in the second half of the fight. And although Canelo was often hitting the body and arms and just whatever he could get, he was still doing more and doing enough to win the rounds. So for me, he definitely won that. I had the first Golovkin fight a draw. I had the second one Canelo winning.
Yeah.
I thought he clearly beat Danny Jacobs. I thought he clearly beat Miguel Cotto. So it just depends how you look at it. But if you look at the bare results, he has beaten some of the best fighters in the world today, including, and obviously some that have retired since as well. He beat the best fighter he could face at super welterweight, which was Lara, when a lot of people were avoiding him. A style that will always be tricky for Canelo as well. And then since moving up to middleweight, beating the likes of Cotto, Golovkin, Danny Jacobs. And then to put the icing on the cake, I mean, I know he had that foray at super middleweight where he beat Rocky Fielding for WBA secondary belt, not to put too much stock in that. But then went up to light heavyweight and beat Sergei Kovalev with an explosive finish as well that will be replayed so many times now. And he's a 3-weight world champion for me, not 4, until he wins a genuine belt at super middle. But I just think in terms of everything, every box to tick, so the skill set, the drawing power, superstar status, although that shouldn't really come into it too much, but most importantly, the achievement and the performances, I think it has to be Canelo.
It's not a bad, some of the points that you make, in that they have weight behind them, but one argument that you can't argue against is, considering how quickly in his pro career he got a world title as well, the guy has done it like that, which obviously Canelo took a bit longer. And also I think he's had belts at weight classes for longer. He's defended them. He hasn't just, like with the light heavyweight one, well done, he's beat a champion, but he's just gone straight back down. And in order to be a world champion, a world champion in a category, for me, obviously I'm not saying he hasn't been a world champion at light heavyweight, but you sort of have to beat everyone there. Just beating one guy doesn't really state your name as the best light heavyweight in the world, because you've beaten one world heavyweight. World light heavyweight, sorry. So for me, the light heavyweight victory doesn't hold a lot of ground, and I don't think that beats an argument of a Lomachenko who stays at the weight classes and fully implants his ground in each division he fights in, and I don't think Canelo does that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I suppose Loma has cleared out the divisions he's been in as much as he could. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
to be fair, at super featherweight, he should have fought Bichelt,
Yeah,
who they're both with top rank. It wouldn't have been that hard a fight to make. Never seemed to be a fight that anyone wanted to push from within there. Gervonta Davis never seemed quite ready for Lomachenko, so you can't blame him for that. But I'm sure the Bichelt fight could have been made. And I think he'd probably have beaten him as well, but it would have been a tough fight. So I'm not sure why that never happened. But yeah, he's obviously hanging around at lightweight. But I think the problem is, talking about cleaning out the division, he's hung around at lightweight long enough now that even if he beats Lopez, people are going to say, well, why don't you hang around and fight Haney? Why don't you hang around and fight Garcia? Do you know what I mean? There's that issue now.
I think he should, but Haney's actually come out and said he doesn't want to fight Loam because he's going to move up. So, that's also a sticky situation for him. But the first argument, is and was that he actually stays at the division and he molds himself into a fighter, not just someone that comes up, moves around and pretends he's a fighter at 17 different weight classes. Like it doesn't count as much for me if you only go there for a couple of fights and just beat a guy for the world title and handpick most of your opponents like Canelo does. I believe he handpicks a lot.
It's interesting. He didn't handpick Golovkin. He didn't handpick Jacobs. I mean, maybe he waited a little bit with Golovkin, so he was a little bit older. I can understand that argument. Kovalev was certainly a bit of a handpick in that he only gave him 7 or 8 weeks to prepare after the Anthony Yard fight.
And a super middle as well. He's got Callum Smith wants a fight, but Billy Joe wants a fight, and he decides who has sort of the worst fight and then picks them, or the one who's come off a bit of a stalemate, not the best victor in the world, and then he'll pick them. I'm not saying Billy Joe did. I mean, he didn't have a great fight in his last fight, but I feel like he does that quite a bit where he'll pick the weaker fighter.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. I mean, against that, I'd say that his level of opposition has been higher. Obviously, he's had a much longer pro career than Loma, which helped.
I can't agree.
He's beaten a raft of world-class opposition, whereas Lomachenko, if you look at his best win, you're probably arguing between Jorge Linares and Gary Russell Jr., I guess, which are both really good wins, but can have holes picked in them. And I think, they're not up there with the likes of Golovkin, who looked virtually unbeatable before Canelo. I know Danny Jacobs pushed him close, but I don't go with the people who think Jacobs was robbed in that fight at all. But I just think Canelo made Golovkin look human in a way no one had before. I think he went up and beat Kovalev, who, he didn't have that long to prepare, but was recognised as the top 1 or top 2 light heavyweight in the world, either before or after Beterbiev. So, quality of opposition-wise, Canelo never looks out of his depth. Lomachenko, it's not his own fault in a lot of cases. Maybe there's just no one in and around his weight who's good enough to really test him, and asking him to go up even further from 135 is probably unfair because he's already moved up way beyond his natural weight. But maybe he's just suffering for the lack of elite competition at his weight.
Yeah, and I think, Linares was still one of the pound for pound at the time when they fought as well. So if Linares made more of a fight of that, it would have been in the conversation of, Loma's fought better opponents because Linares looked better, but he cancelled him out on that night and he wore him down. He beat him at his own game. He read him so well in the first couple of rounds, then just started landing, worked his game so well.
Yeah, no, Canelo for me is just, he's in his physical prime now. He didn't have the long amateur career that Lomachenko had, but has had a longer pro career. It wouldn't surprise me if Lomachenko moves down in weights, has a few more and then retires, whereas I think Canelo will still go for a while yet. And I just think, as I said, the bigger names are in and around Canelo's weight, and I think that's a big advantage.
Agree. Sorry, it was what you said was he made Triple G look human. Now, don't get me wrong, he did, but in that first fight, he drew, but I think Triple G won. So it's like, he made him look human, but on when Triple G was right on it, he looked as good, if not better, than Canelo. So I think that point it has a bit of holes in it. That point there.
I think Canelo struggled a bit in the first fight and he laid on the ropes too often and he fought in spurts too much, which is his biggest flaw, is that he likes to fight in bursts and isn't consistent with his work rate. But in the second fight, he surprised a lot of people by coming aggressively onto Golovkin and had real success with that. And I think he had a lot more confidence to do it. And he fought in a similar way against Kovalev as well. So he's a very versatile fighter, Canelo, and his intelligence is underrated. A lot of things that people used to criticise him for, like his footwork and his foot speed, have improved from how they were before. And his defense is massively underrated. Like, he rarely gets hit with a clean shot now.
Yeah, no. I'm backing obviously Loma, but the defense is underrated. I'll admit that.
Yeah, I just like the way he fights as well. I like his upper body movement, his shot selection, his quick burst of punches. And he's got every shot in the book as well. And I know you can say a lot of the same about Loma, but I think the difference there is that Canelo's a thrown with venom, and he can take people out with those shots and certainly hurt them, except Golovkin, who's got like an iron chin.
Yeah.
Whereas Lomachenko's more of a spiteful puncher. He'll sting you with his shots, but he's not a massive hitter. Certainly not a lightweight anyway.
The only thing I could say about that is it's only because Canelo's obviously in a bigger division. He's a bigger weight category, but that's also not to say that there aren't killers who have a higher knockout percentage ratio at Loma's weight division as well. So it's a fair.
Vontae Davis is a bigger puncher than Lomachenko. Exactly. He's not as good as Lomachenko, but he's a bigger puncher.
There's still big punches at that weight division there, but obviously it's more difficult. But I think the way Loma works, figures out his opponents and loads the knowledge in the first round to then just completely beat people at his own game plan. I've said it so many times, but I just in awe every time I watch him.
When you do the votes for this, can you only give 2 options or can you give more?
How do you mean?
When you ask people to vote and you do the voting thing on here, like we do for who you back in each week.
I think you can do 5.
Okay, so I think even though I don't want to discuss this in great depth because neither of us are picking him, I think you should offer Crawford as a third option. Because otherwise, I think we're just going to get loads of comments saying, couldn't vote. I think Crawford's better than both of them.
Fair enough, yeah. Exactly. And my final point on Loma is that I just believe the stages they're both at in their career as well is very different. So if in a 3 years' time, we might be looking at Loma as sort of a bigger and better opponent, not in terms of weight, but as in what he's done in the sport. They're at different stages in their career. So that could be something to consider when voting as well. But yeah, I think that's
in 3 years' time, there's more chance that Loma's retired than Canelo.
Interestingly, it's a possibility, but he's looking at if he beats the likes of Lopez by then. There's so many guys that he could fight in the next 3 years. So, although it might be his career over, the guys he would have beat and the stage of his career he's at now is not where Canelo is. That's just sort of the point I was trying to make.
All right, well, we'll revisit it in 3 years' time and see who's the pound-for-pound number one then.
Let's do it, man.
But for me, right now, it's Canelo. For you, right now, it's Lomachenko.
Yeah.
You guys out there can vote, just at the top of the screen. Decide who you think's the better of the two. Or if you feel Terence Crawford is more qualified to be pound-for-pound number one than both of them, then pick him. And we'll report on the results next week.
Definitely. This has probably been the first time where we've actually had a completely contrasting in opinions. One of the first times, definitely. So it's been fun to, pick out your arguments and you do the same for me.
That's good stuff. And yeah, to the winner go the spoils.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. And please vote and comment, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.